As of right now, Tesla is worth more than General Motors.
And that is right. The company now officially the most valuable American car company.
Our aspiration is to make the best car on the roads.
At the time of recording, Tesla has a market cap of $152 billion, making it the most valuable car company in America. Musk took an active role in bringing Tesla where it is today. However, contrary to popular belief, the company wasn't actually started by Elon Musk himself. So what's the story? How did it begin and how did it get to where it is today? And what's the secret behind Musk's seemingly impossible success? This is the story of Elon Musk and Tesla, the company that revolutionized the automotive industry. Elon Reeve Musk was born on the 28th of June 1971 to May Musk and Errol Musk in Pretoria, South Africa. During his early childhood, Musk was known to be a voracious reader. He often read for more than 10 hours a day, and over the course of a single weekend he would finish 2 books in their entirety. In fact, he read so much that he ran out of books to read in his school library, and so he read the Encyclopedia Britannica. Musk's favourites included The Lord of the Rings, Asimov's Foundation series, Robert Heinlein's The Moon is a Harsh Mistress, and The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. And he links his success to some of these books. He was a fact factory and a know-it-all. He developed a broad general understanding which undoubtedly shapes the way he thinks, makes decisions, and views the world. When he was just 12 years old, he made a space shooting game called Blaster, and he sold it to a company for $500. The game has even now been recreated and you can play it online. It was apparent from early on that Musk was different from his peers.
I think when I was, 5 or 6 or something, I thought I was insane.
His childhood was not all glorious though. He was bullied at school and didn't have a good relationship with his father, who told him that he would never make anything of his life and would not be successful. When he was in college, Musk thought about what would affect the future of humanity the most.
And the 3 things that I could come up with were the internet, the transition to sustainable energy, both the production and consumption of energy in a sustainable manner, and the third was space exploration.
He was very much interested in video games, but felt that this couldn't impact a lot of people. He developed a deep passion for the internet and saw its ability to impact a lot of people. In 1989, Musk moved to Canada and entered Queen's University to avoid compulsory service in the South African military. He later entered University of Pennsylvania to study business and physics. In 1995, he enrolled in Stanford University but dropped out after just 2 days to start the company Zip2 with his brother Kimball. This became one of the first software companies to create maps and directions, which was kind of like a cross between Google Maps and Yellow Pages.
Pretty cool. We built we were the first to see maps in door-to-door directions. It had been built by a company, Navtech, but never been on the internet. And it was so cool to be the first 2 humans to see it.
However, during this time, the brothers rented a small 20 by 30 foot apartment in Palo Alto. This left them broke.
When my brother and I were starting our first company, instead of getting an apartment, we just rented a small office and we slept on the couch. And we showered at the YMCA.
After several years of hard work, in 1999, Zip2 was sold to Compaq for $307 million, of which Musk took home $22 million. Musk then went on to found X.com, which later became PayPal. This was acquired by eBay in 2002 for $1.5 billion. After the acquisition of PayPal by eBay, Musk took home around the region of $160 to $180 million. He became a dot-com millionaire. Life was good. Musk bought an exclusive McLaren sports car, of which there were only 62 in the world, and went racing with billionaires like Larry Ellison, the Oracle co-founder. Soon after, Musk began thinking about what he should do next. He decided to split all his money between Tesla, SpaceX and SolarCity. Literally all his money, to the point where he had to borrow money to pay rent.
I actually got to the point where I actually literally had to borrow money from friends to pay the bills. It's a bit awkward.
Tesla was actually founded by Martin Eberhard and Mark Tarpenning in July 2003 after they sold their ebook business for $187 million. The company's name is a tribute to the inventor Nikola Tesla. Eberhard and Musk had both looked into a lithium-ion battery-powered version of the AC propulsion T0 electric car prototype.
I got a test drive in the car. It clearly showed that the timing was right to create a compelling electric car.
They had both seen potential in the electric car and so told the CEO Tom Gage to commercialize the vehicle. However, Tom Gage declined, and so this was the starting point for Tesla. However, making an electric vehicle wasn't as easy and simple as it sounds. I mean, if it was a good idea, the big boys would have already been making them, right? So why weren't they? Well, in 2003, GM made their first electric car, the EV1. However, they soon pulled them out and crushed them and didn't actually put them to the market due to high costs and regulatory concerns.
If people recall, there was the EV1, there was the RAV4 EV, and it looked like there was momentum in the direction of electric vehicles. In a remarkable turn of events, GM and Toyota recalled the vehicles and GM crushed them.
For an electric car to be feasible on the market, it needs to be affordable enough, needs to have good range, and needs to meet people's objections about buying an electric car. At the time, the cost of lithium-ion batteries were too high, and after all, the big companies had fuel-powered cars which worked perfectly fine in the market, so there was no need for them to go ahead and build electric cars for commercial purposes. Musk wanted to show that it could be done if done properly. Despite all the reasons pointing towards no, Musk decided to give it a shot and joined Tesla as its board of directors in 2004 and invested some money into the company. He became the biggest shareholder of Tesla. The vision was that if they could work on the lithium-ion battery technology, then electric cars would be ubiquitous. Tesla's strategy consisted of 3 steps. First, start off by building a high-margin, high-performance electric sports car. Then, use the money from that to build a more affordable, luxury electric sedan to compete with companies like Mercedes and BMW. Then, use the money from that to leverage economies of scale to build an even more affordable car targeted at the wider population. Economies of scale is essentially bringing the cost of a car down by increasing its production value. It's basically why larger companies are able to offer cheaper prices because they split their production over a larger number of goods. This will then allow Tesla to compete with some of the bigger companies. If they aim to compete directly with the big boys, it's like trying to budge an elephant with a matchstick. Except there are many elephants and you're a single matchstick, which is going to get burned out very quickly. So, sounds simple, right? Although the plan may seem effective at first, it wasn't all plain sailing as it sounds. The high-margin, high-performance car that Tesla planned was called the Roadster, and its production was due to begin in September 2007. The team at Tesla decided to make the manufacturing a bit easier by basically using the body of an existing car, the Lotus Elise. So in effect it would have been a slightly more spec'd up and modernized version of the Lotus Elise. However, they later developed their own parts and the costs kind of spiraled out of control. At this point, Musk and other investors had invested up to $100 million and there wasn't a single car to show up for it. Tesla was on the brink of bankruptcy, and so Musk decided to take radical action. In 2007, Musk converted 8 million preferred shares into common. He removed Martin Eberhard from CEO position and eventually went on to become the CEO himself. By 2008, both founders had left. Musk went on to cut 24% of the workforce and recalled a majority of the Roadsters planned to be made. He then went on to raise $40 million, formed a partnership with Daimler in 2009, who agreed to buy the batteries from them for the electric smart car. Musk borrowed $465 million from the US government in order to prevent Tesla from going bankrupt. In the end, Tesla ended up making 1,000 Roadsters. The Roadster 2008 had a 992-pound lithium cobalt oxide battery. It had 288 horsepower, went 0 to 60 in 3.7 seconds, had a top speed of 125 miles per hour, and a range of 244 miles. This accomplishment was extraordinary as it made electric vehicles more appealing. After they unveiled the Tesla Roadster, it acted as a catalyst for other car companies to produce electric vehicles.
And I think we've done some good in that regard. The Chevy Volt is directly inspired by Tesla.
In 2010, Tesla raised $226 million and became the first American car company to go public since Ford in 1956. Now, Tesla's plan was to target the wider market with the Model S, the 3 and the X. price. However, there were still a lot of financial issues because not enough cars were being sold. People had literally betted against the Tesla stock to fail and advised people against buying Tesla.
You don't want to own this stock. You don't want to lease it. Heck, you shouldn't even rent the darn thing.
The high cost of lithium-ion batteries meant that it would be expensive to produce a car that the general public would be willing to pay for. Musk sought help from his friend Larry Page at Google, who offered an $11 billion deal between Tesla and Google. However, Tesla car sales soon improved, so Musk turned down the deal. Now it was time to focus on the Model S. Musk had huge aspirations for the Model S.
Our aspiration is to make the best car on the road.
Instead of just being a car that you'd have to compromise on because it was better for the environment, Musk planned to make this the best car ever, hands down, and that you'd buy it even if it was not an electric car. In summer of 2012, Tesla began shipping the Model S. Soon after, Tesla announced the Model X, an SUV vehicle. However, its release was delayed. To solve the problem of the cost of lithium-ion batteries, Musk announced plans for the Gigafactory in 2013. This would be a massive factory to mass-produce lithium-ion batteries. Following on from this, several other features were announced, such as autopilot, and the Model X was also released. The same year, Tesla also unveiled the Powerwall, which is essentially a massive battery pack which can be installed in people's homes to power them with solar panels. A year later, the Model 3 was unveiled. This was a car designed for the wider market, starting at $35,000. Within 1 week, Tesla had received a total of 373,000 reservations for the Tesla Model 3. In March 2017, the company Tencent Holdings Limited bought a 5% stake in Tesla for $1.8 billion. Tesla then went on to pass Ford in market value, making it one of the most valuable car manufacturers in America. Later on in the year, Tesla was listed in the Fortune 500 for the first time. The Tesla has just around 20 moving parts compared to around 10,000 for a fuel car. The entry model Tesla 3 has a range of 250 miles and goes 0 to 60 in just under 6 seconds. Tesla's supercharger network solves the problem of long distance travel, and the car can be charged overnight at home just like you'd charge your phone overnight. So why didn't anyone else think of this before? Why did the big car companies not do this, and are they now going to try and compete with Tesla? As I kind of alluded to before, commercializing electric vehicles was kind of not on the books for companies like Ford and GM. Their past electric vehicles had just been prototypes but never actually properly commercialized due to the cost of the battery technologies and the fact that cars with an internal combustion engine, aka fuel cars, had already been working just fine. As Musk likes to think of it, things will always remain the same if no one does anything to change it. In 2019, Musk released all of Tesla's patents. In his view, if other companies join in making electric vehicles, this would just accelerate the move towards sustainable transportation. Since 2017 and onwards, Tesla's lineup of the Model S, Model X, and Model 3 were complete. Tesla also announced the Model Y to complete the lineup, as well as the 2020 Roadster, the Semi, and the Cybertruck. And now the company seems to be doing well, with stock price even having reached a high of $961 at one point. And Tesla has a growing worldwide presence and sold a record number of cars in 2019. But it's not all happy days. Although the electric vehicle emits zero emissions, you still need to power it up, and most electrical power plants currently produce emissions. So we're still a long way to go from being completely green in terms of transportation. And so what should we expect to see in this space now and in the future? Many car companies are now jumping on the bandwagon and have started making developments to their electric vehicle lineups. The electric vehicle market has been growing rapidly over the last 7 years, and by 2030 global electric vehicle sales are estimated to reach 44 million vehicles per year. So there's still a lot to come, and so watch this space. The road towards the future is sustainable energy.
I think all transportation is actually going to go electric. Planes, trains, automobiles, everything with Ironically, one exception being rockets.
Musk is very confident about this.
If somebody wants to bet me on this, I'm happy to bet them.
He expects that by 2030, all cars manufactured in the US will be pure electric. Tesla's role would have undoubtedly acted as a catalyst to aid that transition. Musk still has plans for the Cybertruck, the Semi, self-driving cars and so on, and over the next 10 years, Musk expects Tesla's market cap to rise to $650 billion. So Tesla revolutionized the electric motor industry and had a huge role in disrupting the entire automotive industry. So how did they succeed when many others had failed? What can we learn from their successes? This is probably the most important part of this video because I'm going to cover some lessons that we can practically apply into our own lives, which is going to shape our understanding of how we view and see the world. After reading into this topic, I picked up 4 key lessons that we can take away, which I'll share with you. But before I do, have a think about this. Most of us think that if an idea has already been done before, you probably won't be able to compete. Or, you know, because the big boys are probably already doing a good job and so there's no need for you to try and compete. And if it hasn't already been done before, then it's probably a bad idea and then it's not worth doing at all. So we live in a paradox where we filter our ideas through this and we may not even be aware that we do. So in order to get anywhere with an idea, you need to think of something you want and then pick something that overlaps the bit in the middle and take action and adjust as necessary to actually try and see that into fruition. The problem is, most people's scope of what's possible isn't actually what's possible. This is the key distinction between most people and Elon Musk. The difference being that Musk's understanding of what's possible is closer to the objective truth. For example, before December 17th, 1903, when the Wright brothers had successfully invented the first powered aircraft, the thought of even lifting a heavy object off the ground would have been a fad, let alone taking international flights across the world. Similarly, people are probably skeptic and have been skeptics of Tesla in the past, but that's because they don't know enough about it and about what's possible. This becomes a problem, and the reason is because we don't know what we don't know, and our scope of what's possible is limited by what we think is possible. However, that may not be the entire truth. So am I saying Musk has all the answers and knows how to solve the entire problems of the world? No. But what is important is the need to gain a broader understanding of the world to increase your view of what's possible, and then to adopt the mindset of actually admitting that you don't know many things. And rather than letting that put you down and basing your self-esteem around being right, you should base your self-esteem around learning and developing and admitting when things are not right so that you can move to the right answer much quicker, and realizing that there are holes in your knowledge and that you may need to leverage knowledge from other people and that you don't know everything. We don't need to know all the answers. We just need to know to ask the right questions. So this brings me on to the 4 lessons, and the first one being starting from first principles.
Rather than reasoning by analogy, you boil things down to the most fundamental truths you can imagine and you reason up from there.
Thing is, you must always question why things are the way they are and not just take them for how they are. Since the 1860s, since the development of the internal combustion engine, the automotive industry hasn't shifted much at all. Tesla came and completely disrupted this entire industry. Why? Because they didn't just take how things were, they actually looked at it from a different perspective and thought about what they could do to change things. And that's because since no one else wanted to make the change, things always remained the way they were. So you need to break out of dogmatic thinking. Dogma is the things that are so because they just are, because media says so, because culture says so, because conventional wisdom says so, because it's always been that way, because status quo says so. We need to build our own understanding and reasoning pathways so as not to live someone else's lives. I didn't even talk about SpaceX or the other companies that Musk started because this would have increased the length of this video considerably and would have taken me a long time to research as well. But the same principles apply. For example, in the rocket industry, rockets had always been expensive and non-reusable, and people just took that for a fact. They took it as how they were given it. No one ever questioned it. Musk said that if it had always been expensive, it will continue to be expensive unless someone does anything to change it. What he did was he looked at the cost of the raw materials and compared it to a final rocket, the final product. And he said the only difference between the raw materials and the final product is how you arrange the atoms to make the final product. And so if you could find a way to more efficiently rearrange the atoms, you'd have a much cheaper rocket. And so without seeing any other catches, that's why he started SpaceX. With Musk, he doesn't just start off with what's already out there. He starts off with the core principles, the foundations, breaks things down into its constituent parts. And the lesson that we can take from this is to always start from first principles. Start off with the fundamental core concepts and work your way up from there. Lesson 2. Be relentless. Musk does what he wants and he's relentless about it. He has a bigger vision and does what it takes to see himself through it. And while that may attract some hate because people are going to think, oh, it's Musk's world and we're all living in it, and you know, but that's life, not everyone is going to like you. So although you should start small and start from first principles, you should also have a bigger vision and be relentless about achieving that. Musk went through so many setbacks, some of which I've mentioned in this video, many of which I haven't even mentioned. Not to add the multiple failures in his other ventures, including multiple failed rocket launches with SpaceX. Despite this, and despite multiple brinks of bankruptcy, Musk became resilient and saw things through till the end. One notable example in which Tesla stands out is that Musk wanted Tesla to be responsible for delivering their cars directly to consumers by selling them through their websites and through Tesla showrooms. However, many states actually required that you had to sell through dealers. This was written in the law. You can imagine the logistical challenges that this posed. However, Musk was adamant about fixing Tesla's logistical issues, and so even though it was a bold and disruptive move, Musk believes that the hard work eventually paid off. So it goes on to show how you need to be relentless in the face of adversity. I haven't even mentioned, or maybe I touched on it briefly, about the fact that he built an entire supercharger network just to overcome the obstacle of long distance travel. Most founders in other car companies may have probably thought, oh okay, well I guess the car's not going to do long range, so I'll make it into a city car, or I'll advertise it as being only for here and there travel. Musk just thought completely outside the box and decided, you know what, I'm going to make an entire supercharger network in the US. But just think about this. I mean, for many of us this wouldn't even have crossed our minds, maybe because we didn't even know it was possible. And so that comes back to having a broader understanding of what's possible and also being relentless about what you want and making that happen. Have you ever had it that when you wake up in the middle of the night and you go to the toilet, sometimes your brain decides to think, you know what, I haven't thought of in a long time about ghosts and monsters. And so I don't know if it's just me, but I end up having these irrational fears about going back and from the toilet because there are ghosts. And you might be thinking, what does this have to do with anything? The point is, with Musk, he sees things through a scientific and objective viewpoint. So when he was younger, he used to be afraid of the dark, but then he thought to himself that actually the dark is just the absence of light photons. And so being afraid of the dark was irrational. There was no need to be afraid of the dark. Of course, that doesn't mean that's instantly going to get rid of all your fears, but the point is that scientific understanding is actually a very good way of looking at things in terms of how they actually are. Having a scientific understanding gives you an objective truth and a better understanding of the world. And yes, of course, it doesn't explain anything and there are still so many questions unanswered, but it's such a rational and objective way of looking at things and thinking about things. There's no doubt that Elon Musk knows a lot. He built a car company to where it is now, and he built a rocket company as well, so even just those two industries alone he has a huge knowledge in. And he doesn't just know a bit, he can see right from the big vision all the way down to the granular details.
I mean, I've met a lot of super smart people, but they're usually super smart on one thing. And he's able to have conversations with our top engineers about the software and the most arcane aspects of that. And then he'll turn to our manufacturing engineers and have discussions about some really esoteric welding process for some crazy alloy.
His broad knowledge in science and engineering really allowed him to think differently and hence make progress on the world. But in order to run a business, you also need to know about leadership, about management, about organization, about running a company, and so he's also developed those skills as well. The good thing is that all of these skills are learnable, and so we need to have a hunger and strive for continual learning, but also understand the limits of your own understanding. Those who are willing to accept to be wrong and that they don't know everything will move forward much faster, because their goal is based around getting to the right answer, whatever it takes, whether it requires a change of course or expertise help, rather than someone who has a fear of being wrong or being embarrassed or needing to always be right. So there we have it, that's the story of Elon Musk and Tesla. Of course there are a lot of details that I've missed out. I've only highlighted the main important points and the lessons that I took away from this. I think we can all gain something from the way he thinks and think about the world in a different lens. And so I just want to say, if you've made it this far into this video, you're a G. Thank you for watching, like I really appreciate it. Much of my research was inspired by a blog post series that Tim Urban did on his blog called Wait But Why, and also Elon Musk's biography by Ashley Vance. And so I'll link to both of them down in the description. I'll also link to the other sources that I used to make this video, as well as the video clips that I used throughout this video, and feel free to check out some of my other videos which may or may not pop up somewhere here. If you liked it, then like. If you loved it, then subscribe, and I really would appreciate that. So again, thank you so much for watching. Make sure you stay tuned for some banging more videos. With that being said, I'll see you again in my next video.